The other week I raced a 5k and it was my slowest time in almost 3 years. Off the back of a year that's seen me run 2:29 for the marathon, knocking over 5 minutes off my time, this wasn't a performance I was proud of. And I nearly didn't make this video because I felt like hiding away and pretending it never happened. So why am I giving it the spotlight? All of you watching this will have experienced failure at some point, whether that's in running, another sport, or in something totally different. And this is going to sound a bit cliche, but it really does present you with a remarkable opportunity to learn more about yourself, perhaps than if it had gone really well or just okay. And later on in this video, I'm going to talk about how I bounce back from a poor performance and how you can too, because we spend so much of our time on the physical training to be as ready as we can on that start line that sometimes we neglect the all-important mental training we need to get us to the finish line or back on the start line after a setback. After all, your legs can't do the talking unless your mind is on side to will them there and push through the pain. But first, let's get the race out of the way. Why did it go badly? What did I do wrong? Before I even got to the race, I had a gut feeling it wasn't going to be a sensational performance. Practically speaking, I'd been focusing on half marathon training because that's my next big goal I've got coming up, and I'd neglected the faster end work that I'd normally do before a 5k. Everything about that is great. I should be focusing on half marathon training because that's what I'm targeting. But mentally, I suppose I wasn't feeling as confident as I often am because I felt unprepared to bring my A game to this 5k race. The first mistake came, I think, in me ignoring that feeling and another feeling I had, which is really very alien to me, in that I wasn't excited to run this race. Normally, I experience this real buzz around racing and an immense excitement and nervousness, of course, but that wasn't there, which, now that I've reflected on it, was my gut telling me that I wasn't ready for this race. I didn't really want to do it. And I think maybe I should have listened to that. Anyway, we got to this race. It was slightly windy, a muggy summer's evening, not bad racing conditions. The course was flat and easy to navigate, and there was a good turnout from other runners and supporters. All the good things you want at a race. I summoned all of the usual behaviors I'd exhibit and the feelings I'd feel on a race day where I was really up for it. Fake it until you make it and all that. Maybe I can just trick myself into being excited for this one and get out of my funk. That clearly didn't work because some of the pieces were missing. Things that can only be there when I'm fully mentally prepared to go out there and have a really good time. And I'm not sure I really had much of a race strategy other than to do okay on fairly tired half marathon legs. And I started to doubt myself. Now, normally before a race, I'll sit down, write out my goals for that race. Yes, what time do I want to run, the pace, but also the strategy. How will it start? How will the middle go? How will I finish? I'll spend time thinking about how I want to feel, strong, brave, determined, in control, whatever it may be. And I hadn't done any of that, not even subconsciously. So we line up, I'm thinking to myself, there are 3 other girls in this race. They're all track runners, all of them have a faster 5k best than me, and the rest of the field are men. I'm gonna get chewed up and spat out here. I was thinking that on the start line. Come on, Phily, have you learned nothing from the hard work you've put in on your mental game? The gun goes off, and what happens? I'm left for dead. 20 meters off the back of the pack from the get-go. Am I surprised now? Of course not. I'd already written this, in a way, in my mind before the race. However, I also ran a 3:06 first K, whilst being literally dead last in the field, which was way too fast. 3:06 is his 15:30 pace. The best I've ever run is 15:40, and I'd set off at PB pace. So really, the race was also the wrong race for me. It was just too fast. And that's not me making excuses for my poor mental attitude, and I didn't have to go off that fast. I was already last, but there is such a thing as being in the right race, surrounded by people running at or going for a similar time to you, and that race wasn't it for me, right there and then. So that annoyed me, I think. Actually, during the race, I can remember cursing to myself in my head a couple of Ks in, staring at the back of the next guy thinking, this is a bloody waste of time. I should have seen this coming and should have asked to be put in the slower race. Really unhelpful thoughts. mid-race. I blew up, there was no way I was sustaining 306Ks, and I did pick a few people off who I guess had worse days than me, having gone off too hard and paid the price, but I ran 16:30, which is almost a minute slower than my PB. Crossed the line and was just pissed. No one goes to a race wanting to perform poorly, but it started to sink in that I'd actually made this harder for myself than it needed to be. And that's when we turn a corner. Acceptance. That wasn't my best today. I didn't bring my A game. And that's okay. I'm just gonna let that sit there for a moment. It's okay. Now, before I talk about bouncing back from disappointment and what this race has taught me, I need to pivot to some really important examples of fantastic failures that have come before inspirational, sensational successes. Jessica Ennis-Hill. You might have first heard of her when she won a magnificent gold on Super Saturday at the 2012 Olympic Games. 4 years before that career highlight, she had to pass on her first Olympics with a stress fracture in her foot. Usain Bolt false started in the 100-meter semi-finals of the 2011 World Championships. He was disqualified and couldn't run in the final to defend his world title as the current world record holder. That's absolutely crushing, thanks to a split-second failure. He came back 2 years later at the next World Championships to win both titles back in the 100 and the 200. And just last week at the World Champs, Femke Bol, the Dutch 400 hurdler and sprinter, was within spitting distance of the finish line and clenching gold for her nation in the mixed 4x4 relay before tripping and falling flat on her face on the world stage. She messed up, and that must have been agonizingly hard to take, with her individual event and the women's relay still to run. I can't imagine the pressure on her shoulders, but she came back within a few days later and won double gold. We are all human. Failure is inevitable. What's not guaranteed is what comes next. You're presented with a choice. Learn from it and bounce back, or wallow in self-pity. Spoiler alert, you want to take the first option.
Don't beat yourself up over past mistakes. You are going to fuck up again in the future.
So how do you bounce back? It starts with acceptance, admitting it's okay, that it's a natural part of the process to improve at anything, not just running, and that there's no such thing as perfection. Let go of that straight away. Then you decide not to give up. Before you succeed, you have to have your last failure before that success. If you give up, you've admitted defeat in the face of that challenge. That race didn't really pan out how you wanted, so that's just that. If you don't put those shoes back on and get out the door and go again, that has to be with the peace of mind that you honestly don't want it that bad. That's harsh, but it's true. How can you just decide not to give up? Okay, use that failure as fuel. Let's not let that be the lasting memory of the 5K, the marathon, whatever it is for you. Let's put the failure into the next attempt and fuel the fire. Not this time. And most importantly of all, you're going to want to adopt the idea that the only way to fail is forwards. This is really believing that by failing at something, you absolutely always learn something. Reflect on how it played out, figure out the reasons why and which of those are within your control, and learn from those mistakes. Take those lessons with you, and you can only be better next time. Lots of people have a negative relationship with failure, and of course, no one goes out to lose or to fail, but it really is a healthy part of progress, and by leaning into the hard, uncomfortable feelings that failure brings up, you can begin to put the plans in place to change the story for next time. I think that's why I've been able to bounce back so quickly from this one. I didn't dwell on it for long at all because I know that this is something I've got to get comfortable with, and there's still so much to learn. I've learned to trust my gut when I'm not feeling my usual excited self. When racing isn't fun anymore, something's wrong. And I learned that I've still got a ways to go to be my best mentally. Yes, I've done a lot of work in that area, I'm working with a sports psychologist, but I can and will be better. So next time something doesn't go your way, whether that's a race, a game, a career opportunity, or just one of those days that it all goes to pot, give yourself the space to fail and accept what you can't change. Then get back on the horse, fail forwards and try again. And if you've missed the mark recently in a race or bounced back better, tell me about it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. And as always, love the grind.